Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. I am Vadim Perlovsky, and today we're excited to welcome a fantastic brand out of Scotland, one of the oldest distilleries in Scotland, but one that many people don't think about, don't know about, but we're excited to get really nerdy and find out all about it. We are talking about Balblair Distillery. I am excited to dive deep into this. We have 6 wonderful expressions to try tonight. And joining us from Scotland, we have Stuart Baxter. Stuart, thanks for joining us. We have a fantastic lineup. Stuart, do you want to announce what order we're going to taste in? We have the 12, the 15, the 18, the 25, as well as 2 single cask expressions that are local cask picks.
Yeah, of course. So we're actually going to be going in order of age, which is nice and easy for everyone. When we get to the 2 final single casks, I think we're going to keep them separate and do them separately. Okay. Reason being, what I'm going to talk about today a lot is the new mixed spirit and how the distillery character is quite apparent all the way through, even to the 25-year-old. And I'll talk about how that happens and what we're going to be going through. But then with the distillery characters, we've got 2. So we've got one at cask strength 55.4, and then we have the Oloroso exclusive cask as well. Mm-hmm. So I think what we'll do is do them in that order as well. We'll go from the 2005 into the Oloroso cask as well. So we're going to be going 12, 15, 18, 25, and then into these 2 single casks at the very end. So unfortunately, because those 2 single casks are rare and also exclusive to the States, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I believe so. They're exclusive to the stores that pick them. Yeah. The
so I unfortunately don't have them, but what I can do is talk about Balblair, the new mixed spirit, and everything up to those ones, and then you get to talk to me, because after 4 whiskeys at that point, right, we'll all be good pals, and you can tell me what you taste in them.
Fantastic. And I think before we get to the single casks, we'll do the little poetry part that we talked about. Everyone should have some cookies in front of them, so it should be a really fun night for everyone. We are predominantly joined by the Los Angeles Whiskey and Spirits Guild. I see lots of familiar faces. Welcome, everyone. Lovely to see you. Happy New Year. This is our first tasting of 2022. It's looking to be a great year if we're starting off with this. David Donahue's the president of the guild. David, do you want to say a couple words?
First, Happy New Year to everybody. I've missed you. My life was not the same. I did not know what to do, and my wife was a little annoyed that she didn't get rid of me at least one evening during the week. So, hey, thank you, Vadim, as always, for putting together these wonderful virtual tastings for us and other members of other groups that I hope are here as well. It's wonderful to be able to kind of spend the evening with you, and I have to say I'm really looking forward to finding out more about this brand, because I've never had it before. So welcome, everybody, and let's have fun tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, David. I think everyone here is a regular. If anyone's here for the first time, you know the drill. We're here to get nerdy, ask questions. Feel free to ask questions of Stuart. Put them in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself, share your tasting notes. We just ask that we don't talk over each other. So if you're not talking or participating, make sure you keep yourself on mute. But other than that, have fun, participate. That's why we're all here. This is not a one-way TV show. This is a master class, if you will. We're here to participate and have fun. Stuart, if you want to give us a couple of words about yourself, and you said Michael earlier?
Maurice,
yes. So introduce yourself and the brand, and Derek, if you want to say a couple of words, please. Welcome.
Yeah. Derek, do you want to say a few words before we kick off? Or Maurice?
Yeah, I'll start, and then I guess I'll go, and then Maurice, and then you can chime in and then take it from there. I feel like that's probably the easiest route.
Perfect.
So yeah, my name is Derek Mosley. I am the US brand manager overseeing the in-house portfolios that includes Balblair, Old Pulteney, Speyburn. We also have some Anak is another one of our fantastic single malts. And then we have a few other really exciting brands as well, including Karoon Gin, which is produced at Balmenic Distillery, which is a working single malt distillery. So the portfolio includes 5 single malt distilleries. Yeah, I think my math is right there. I actually work for Hodling and Co. We're the US importer. And so myself, along with our incredible sales team, are the ones that help make help kind of coordinate a lot of this with Vadim, and then also make sure that we're getting these products into all the right accounts so that you guys can enjoy them at your leisure. So really excited for tonight. And with that, Maurice, over to you.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. I look forward to meeting all of you at some point in person down the road at a local tasting. My name is Maurice Chevalier IV. I live in Orange County, California. I was formerly with Hodling & Co., actually going back to its old Anchor brewing and distilling days. I had a little bit of a COVID sabbatical and just joined with International Beverage Holding Group 2 weeks. 2 weeks as of Tuesday, and loving it. It's an adjustment dealing with the UK time and the US time. So I look forward to paying back Stuart, and he's been very gracious. And fun fact, he is a vampire, so don't feel too sorry for him. He never sleeps.
Yes.
But I'm sure he's gonna pay me back. He's gonna have me do the Ulaanbaatar Mongolian Whiskey Club at 3 a.m. one time, so to fill in for him. But happy to be here and always learning. And with that, I'll shut up and get ready to drink.
Yeah, I've just realized that, Maurice, you don't actually ever see me sleep, right? I'm just always up.
But when you're up, you're upside down. That's weird.
Yeah.
You have a cape. It's just
Right. Yeah, it's something unusual going on here.
Yeah.
It would be a little
No,
weird if you saw you, if he was just watching you sleep. That also be a little strange.
Yeah, well, I keep the camera on, right? So it's my own fault. It's my own
fair
fault.
enough.
There's going to be a pay-per-click link put in pretty soon.
There you go. We're
The
trending
red
now.
button. No, it's a genuine pleasure to be here. And no, I was saying in the tasting we did last night, I absolutely love what I do. I really do enjoy doing these things. And I think it stems from a lot of my friends are not big whiskey drinkers. So see, when I get to do tastings like this and speak to like-minded people who genuinely love whiskey and we can talk in a very open forum, I love it because I never get to do it with them. I've tried my best, my very, very best to slowly introduce them to it. And they're not taking on to it. But I've got another night out with them this weekend, so I will do my best. I promise you all, because I think it's my duty as well to get more people into whiskey. So I promise all of you I'll do my utmost. But we've got 6 whiskeys to get through. So what we're going to do is we're just going to jump straight into the first one. How does that sound? I've seen a lot of people just going sitting there going.
Quick question for you. A lot
Yes.
of the members have done quite a few of these, so they have 6 glasses in front of them. Should they pre-pour now, or should we pour as we go?
I think it's always beneficial to pour whiskey as soon as you can. It's always going to aerate it slightly, as much as it's, it is at high strength of 46%. Every single one of them is up to the single casks. But whiskey does oxidize. If anyone's ever left, a whiskey glass next to the sink in the morning, then you come back to it and smell it, and it smells completely different. Whiskey does oxidize. It will change in character. So it's always beneficial to pour it, but we're not going to see that immediate effect just now, but we're still going to see the qualities of the whiskey regardless. And that's what we're going to be pouring. But, coming from to fully introduce myself, sorry, I'm Stuart Baxter. So I'm the Spirits Ambassador for IBHL, International Beverage Holdings. My background has been hospitality since I was able to pour a pint. This was something that was me basically paying my way through university and then led to me just getting sucked into the world of hospitality, drinks and the trade. So previously I worked as a commis sommelier for Gleneagles Hotel, if anyone's been there. After that, a period of time working as a bar manager, and then I was 2 years in India with Pernod Ricard. So I was their single malts ambassador for India, Sri Lanka with Paul. And then I went to work for a much smaller family-run company called Douglas Lane, if anyone's ever heard of them. So the brilliant thing with working with them was really sharpening my teeth in terms of whiskey knowledge. So they at the time worked with 65 plus distilleries. And of course, I was seeing 65 plus distilleries at different years going into different casks, whether it was a first fill, second fill, third fill, Oloroso or port cask or bourbon cask. So that really, really expanded my knowledge. And then when IBHL came knocking at my door, my family had been a fan of Old Pulteney, for example, which is one of our brands in our portfolio for such a long time that not that they forced me into it, but they realized how much free whiskey they could get from Pulteney, Balblair and Anok. So yeah, Dad's real proud. Let's just say that. He's real happy. So no, as soon as they came knocking, I was really excited at the opportunity to work with the portfolio, and so I've been with them for a period of time now, which is great. So that's me, and that's that boring stuff out of the way. But We've got 6 whiskies, and the one thing I'd like to just jump into is our first dram, if you want to do that. And then we'll talk about a little bit more about Balblair. Perfect. This is an open forum. If you want to come off mute, ask me a question, please do. Otherwise, it's just me monologuing. As I said, I've just woken up as well, so my throat it sounds really deep, which is great. It's not normally this husky. But if there's any questions, just interrupt me so I can take a break and get a sip of water as well. And if you don't want to come off mute, you've obviously got the chat system as well. So you can use the chat system for everyone. You can also send me, and a lot of people don't know this, you can send me a direct message. If you just want to ask me a sneaky question, I won't mention who you are. You can change it from everyone to just me, or Derek or Maurice, and then we'll say the question without saying your name as well. So just in case anyone's shy. But after a few whiskeys, I'm hoping you won't be. But any questions, any tasting notes as well, we'll get onto that. The one thing I love about the core range of Balblair, a lot of you will have seen the vintages up until 2019 when we introduced the core range. The core range is all 46%, it's all high strength, all non-chill filtered, and all natural color. So there's no color, and it's high strength of 46%, not cask strength. That'll be different for the single casks, obviously. So it's not cask strength, but all high strength. So Balblair 12, we all ready for this? Now this is your whiskey now. You do whatever you want with it, right? I cannot dictate this. If you want to taste long, taste long. If you want to drink ahead and knock off Zoom, you can do whatever you want. It's your whiskey now. It's 12 years old, 46%, non-chill filtered, no caramel colouring. The casks that we age this in, have a nose, have a sip, share taste notes, feel free to go for it. I'm just going to keep talking through it. The 2 cask types that we use this. So the casks that we use have all been ex-American oak. So they're all ex-bourbon. Now, I don't always say ex-bourbon because I think that's fairly misleading. As much as we're getting those vanilla kind of creamy honey notes coming into it, what we have are the 2 style of casks. So we actually have a DCRC cask, which it's super simple. When we get the casks in, we strip all the char that was there from the original distillery, or even if we'd filled it before, and then we re-char the cask again. So we're actually stripping a section of char and oak from the inside of the barrel and then re-charring it to get further access deeper down. And what this creates is a cask that's not as intense as, say, a first fill bourbon or a second fill bourbon. It creates a really unintense, I feel like that's not a word, really unintense cask. So we're using that style of cask, and then we're also using a refill hogshead. So if anyone knows hogsheads are repurposed barrels, right? So it's technically a refill hogshead is the 4th time that cask has been used. So what we're using are 2 types of casks that are really, really unintense. They're not imparting huge amounts of intensity onto the new make spirit. And the reason being is Balblair new make spirit is delicate. And we'll get on to talk about it in just a minute, but it's recording, so my analogy is always like rich tea biscuit that you could snap it clean in half, but it's not always the favored one of marketing team. But it's super delicate. So we can introduce this into, and we're going to see it in an Oloroso cask. We can introduce it into Oloroso cask and it'll produce a wonderful flavor. But the distillery character, when we keep aging it, is going to disappear quite quickly because of how delicate it is. So it'll be interesting for you guys to see the Oloroso cask. But what we have here in the DCRC and the refill hogsheads is a very delicate, mellow, and I think that's representative of the color as well. It is really, really light. And the one thing I was saying in the tasting last night and talking about is age. 12 years old. What was everyone here doing 12 years ago? Anyone to own up? Admit anything? Remember we're being recorded?
Facebook regularly reminds me what I was doing 12 years ago.
Right, go on, David. Bring out the memories.
It's crazy, you know. A whole lot smaller person and doing a whole lot more traveling up and down the coast.
Yeah.
12 years ago, I was setting a Guinness World Record, and then I drank whiskey afterwards.
No,
actually,
this is the best one.
I drank a lot of wine the night before, which gave me a huge headache, but I think it helped me, helped with the world records.
And what was the record, Kate?
I was a part of the largest wingsuit formation ever put in existence.
No, this is like, so I ask that every so often in tastings when I remember, what to, this is easily the best one. Easily the best. Unless anyone wants to top that. So
I'll get the certificate.
I was gonna say I was working at the Golden Globes, which isn't happening anymore, but I think Kate still wins.
You're working at the Golden Globes as well? Wow,
Yeah,
okay.
I used to work it every year, but now, because they don't have any Black people, they don't air it. And yeah, so.
12
Right,
years ago,
Kate.
I was receiving an Oscar for making stuff up.
Okay, we don't need to start lying now, Vadim.
Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story, all right?
I'm just off camera. I'm just googling largest wingsuit formation. This is absolutely amazing. That's really, really cool. Thanks, Kate. So are we all done for tonight? We can just finish up there. That was a pretty good high point. Cool.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. It was good seeing
Night.
you.
Okay.
Cheers.
So no sherry in this.
So the point I was making is that 12 years ago, when Kate was doing the largest wingsuit formation, and we had Kerry at the Golden Globes and Vadim winning a make-believe Oscar, this liquid, the youngest liquid in this bottle, was going into cask. That's the point I was making, which seems really uneventful now. But that's the whole point. That 12 years is a very, very long time. To produce even that color, I think is really, really impressive. When you look at counterparts at 12 years old in casks that light, you're going to be looking at the same color as water. So there is a level of treatment there, and things that I can attribute this to are probably how heavily we char those casks as well and prepping them for that liquid to go into. So I know people have taken the on the nose and the palate. Has anyone got anything specific on the nose that they've got? Feel free to put it in the chat or come off mute if you'd like. As I saw, Julius was buttery toast, honey, absolutely, and then kind of doughy veggie at the tail end. Is that on the nose, Julius?
That was nose and through my taste. Like the
Nice.
doughiness came from the end for me for the finish.
Yeah, and I know what you mean. Is it that kind of like kind of reminds me like beignet doughiness, if that makes sense? Like a sweet dough.
Yeah, no, yeah. Like, like a donut shop. It just reminds me, my dad used to manage a Winchell's down in Cali, and it has that remembrance of that.
Nice. And the one thing I love is see when people use memory because it's a brilliant thing, right? We talk about tasting notes as trying to be super specific. I will go in tangents. I said this last night. I will go in tangents, and you'll be like, "Come on, bring it back." But people using memory is such a powerful thing for tasting notes because it's a really difficult thing to do. But when you have that, eureka moment or those specific, very emotional, personal memories, it's always really good to kind of bring on and use for tasting notes. So Maria, spicy. What do you mean by spicy? Is it chili spice? Is it cinnamon spice? Where's Maria?
Hi. Yeah, I taste more of like a maybe nutmeg or
Nice.
Or vanilla, I guess maybe.
Yeah, I mean, vanilla is obviously one of the more prominent flavors in bourbon casks, ex-bourbon casks. And the great thing about these tasting notes, you'll never be wrong, ever. The only time you might be wrong is if you say something peaty, when there's no peat that's been infused into the barley and you make spirits in. But something can still be smoky without being peaty. So you can get something that's like it's got a kind of smoked aroma or smoked cinnamon or something along those lines. But the only time you'll ever be wrong is if you say peat and non-peat. Otherwise, I'm going to sit here and go, yes, amazing, brilliant. Because it's true, it's completely subjective, and what you taste is completely unique to you. And as much, and again, the more whiskey I have, the more passionate and romantic I'll get. But the whole idea about this is the only person that can tell how good a whiskey is you. No one else in the world can tell you if a whiskey is good or bad or not. It's only you that can do that. So what I'm basically summing that up. I said, don't listen to me. But I'm going to basically just facilitate these, talk about them, and then talk about the tasting notes that I get. But if you don't get the tasting notes that I get, I'm not the one that does all the tasting notes for a lot of the cast. Some of them I do, but at the end of the day, it's my opinion. It's not your opinion, right? So I've not had taken a sip yet, but Slange, thank you all for joining. Cheers, post, santé, salut.
I think it's appropriate you're drinking this so early in the morning because a lot of the brands we've had, single malt scotch, they call these early ones sort of breakfast malts, something you could just eat drink all day, every day. And so I think it's appropriate that you're having for breakfast, because I get that a lot from this. It's easy drinking, goes down, but still has a good finish, still has a good flavor, nice mouthfeel, even though it's got an unctuousness without being oily, which is interesting because that's kind of hard to do. But I'm in a hotel room, so I'm doing it out of a plastic cup. So forgive me, but it's.
Do you have 6 plastic cups?
I have 2.
Okay.
But those aren't the big red solo cups that you prefer for your tastings. So
That's
you
what I
have
prefer.
to make do.
Exactly. I'm doing my best. Got to improvise.
It just means you've got to finish what's in the cup before you move on, right? So it's dependent what you pour.
Well, I pour all, because what am I going to do? Take back half bottles? Come on, we're having a good time.
There we go. Damn straight. No, exactly that. But and as you say, the one thing is I was going to draw attention to is that mouthfeel. It is quite textural, and I think it has quite a long finish for the style of casks that it's in as well, right? But I think it's an absolute cracker. And the one thing with Balblair, and we'll talk about it. Do we want to move on to 15 before I monologue again? Let me know. We happy moving on to 15?
Sure, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I'm already there.
And if anybody wants to know, I did find, and this is my virtual background, is the picture of the Guinness World Record of largest wingsuit flight formation.
It doesn't count unless you can point out which one Kate is.
She's right there.
Okay. Got it.
Oh, how'd you get you just spotted me right away. That's amazing.
And I'm going to go get a lottery ticket.
So, Kate, which one were you? Sorry? Roughly?
David, point it out again. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's actually a little bit further away from you. One more. There I am, right there.
Fantastic. That is easily the best answer I've had to that. And I'm going to be using that from now on until someone else.
You are on record, because no one else has had a Guinness World Record holder on a virtual tasting that I'm aware of. And if you have one, that's great. Let us know when you do.
No, and you know what, Kate, I'll let you know once somebody potentially has a story, and we can come back together and do another tasting with everyone, and we can judge it, right? So move on to 15, and as I said, have a nose, have a taste of it. It's your whiskey now. This is still 46% non-chill filtered, no caramel colouring. And if anyone wants me to talk about non-chill filtration or caramel colouring, like, feel free. I'm kind of marketing's worst nightmare with regards to talking about things like this, because I think whiskey is very logical. It's a wonderful thing, and a lot of people talk about, the romanticism runs away when you talk about these things. Like, I don't think so. I think it's testament to the actual craft of whiskey, and actually adds stories and adds.
Yeah, Stuart, I agree with you. I think that there are some. We've been doing 120 of these virtual tastings or so. Most of us have been on all of them, and we've heard about caramel coloring and chill filtration and different ways that they do that. And I think there's an argument that could be said, yes, you could use it for some expressions. That's great. But, I don't want to say that I'm a purist, but I appreciate just what it can kind of exude with all those congeners and fatty acids and everything else that, hey, if it's gonna flock at some temperature, that's okay. I'll shake it and I'm not going to be worried about it, because that adds the flavor and the mouthfeel to it.
Yeah. So exactly. That's what chill filtration, right? So it's at 46%, there seems to be this working knowledge that at 46%, if you chill it down with average temperature water or even a little drop of ice, it won't become cloudy. However, if you leave it chilled for a period of time, yes, it will become cloudy, and that's just those fatty acids reacting with the temperature change. So a lot of people think it's adding water, but it's actually a temperature change that's causing it to become cloudy. But the interesting thing is that I completely agree with you, David, in the sense that when we non-chill filter, we're allowing those fatty acids and natural proteins from the cask into the final whiskey. And for me, 100% affects texture. And again, for me, I believe it does affect flavor in a very minute way, but I believe it does. But you'll have a lot of people argue the opposite. And so do not listen to me as gospel. Please do your own reading on it. But I 100% believe it affects texture. It can't not affect it. And whether that indirectly or directly affects flavor, I firmly believe that it does. However, having said that, chill filtration and non-chill filtration, I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference between one or the other. However, mouthfeel, I think you definitely will be, if that's your so. From a flavor point of view, I don't think you'd necessarily be able to change it. But yeah, it's an interesting one. It's a lot of people talk about, non-chill filtration. It's you're doing nothing to it, but you can charge more. That's the whole idea. But the whole point behind that is that when the majority is running through one filtration unit and you're chilling it all the time, and 95% of your stock is running through that, and then having to switch that to a non-chill filtration unit, that's when the cost, because all of a sudden you're having to switch it all over and then switch it back. And that is a huge amount of cost to be able to do that. And that's where the cost is incurred. So we've had some tasting notes come into it. Caramelized figs, very nice, Laurie. That's an absolute cracker of tasting note. Vanilla cream, overripe fruit is a really good one, and going kind of venturing into that tropical one. And that is a nod to the hat of Balblair's New Mix Spirit. So Balblair's New Mix Spirit, as I mentioned earlier, is really, really delicate. And the reason being is John McDonald, our head distiller. So those of you that were on early. So John, you look up John, and he'll most likely have nice cropped hair, very neat. He's about 6'3", tweed jackets. He's a very, very handsome man. But over lockdown, he let his hair grow down to his shoulders. He's got a lovely goatee. I'm very aware this is recorded, and you might see this at some point. But long hair, lovely goatee, and he just looks like a well-groomed stallion. That's the only thing I can attribute to. He's just when we went up last to see him, I think it was not last to see him, but we went up in September last year, and the first time, one of the first times I met him, and he was standing there just in front of the distillery with his tweed jacket on, his long hair, and I was like, it's just picture perfect. You bring a tear to your eye. But John's one focus is quality over quantity. So our capacity at Balblair for litres of alcohol per year is about 1.8, 1.9 million. John will quite happily run that at 1.7. Very happily run that. So all of our distillery managers for the 5 distilleries that Derek is mentioning all have litres of alcohol KPIs. They're all measured on what they put out every month, every year, and they're measured on it. John will quite happily fail that KPI on a monthly basis if it means that the quality of liquid that he's putting out is as of his standard. And what I mean by that is we could pump out, arguably from Balblair, we could probably pump out 2.1 unsafely, but we could probably pump out 2.1 litres of alcohol per year. But what that means is, if you can imagine, I don't know why I always use eggs as analogies for whiskey, but it seems to work when we talk about aging and producing it. But if you imagine trying a boiling hot pan, boiling hot, and you try and cook a nice, delicate fried egg, it's not going to be that great. Whereas if you have a much cooler pan and you're producing a fried egg, you can much easily monitor it, make sure that it's hitting those points, and cook it the whole way through, and it's going to be a much more palatable egg. It's the same kind of concept. If you're running the stills at such a hot temperature and as fast as you can, you're going to miss cut points from your heads, hearts, and tails. You're going to end up with more sulfury notes coming through into your final new mixed spirit. So yes, you can put 2.1 litres of alcohol per year, but that's not what you want to do. You want to run it really low and slow. For example, our fermentation times are around 60 hours, fluctuating either side of that, depending on the guys are working an 8-day week and leaving it for 2 days, or they're working a 10-day week and they're there for those other 2 days. So roughly 60 hours fermentation, which is on the upper end of your average fermentation time for any distillery. And then the one thing that we also have is a fermentation or a wash receiver. So that will take about 2 to 4 hours. It'll go from the wash tank into the wash receiver before it finally goes into the still. And that wash receiver will hold it for about 2 to 4 hours. So that's a further 2 to 4 hours of fermentation prior to going into the still. And if I lose anyone, just ask me. I'll repeat anything you want me to. So we have a long period of fermentation, and then our stills are running at a very slow rate. And what we end up with is what we're talking about with that ripe fruit that we picked out. Who picked it out again? Credit for it as well. Amanda. That overripe fruit is because what we really focus on is the new mixed spirit. It's really tropical. It's very fruity. And this is what I was talking about earlier. When we go into the 25-year-old, you'll still be able to see that overripe fruit, tropical. For me, when it gets into the 25-year-old, it becomes banana, whereas the 12-year-old, for me, it's more pineapple. It's a much more sharper. But you'll see this distillery character all the way through to the 25-year-old. And it'll be interesting for you guys to taste the 2 single casks. It'll be interesting to see how that distillery character is perceived in those 2 as well. Honey, figs come up again. Nutmeg, double cream, nice. We'll go dark milk. caramel laced orange dreamsicle. What's a dreamsicle? Is this a thing, or is that just
It's a frozen treat. It's like a popsicle, and it has like orange and vanilla.
But it's more creamy than a popsicle.
right? Got you. So we've got something called a fab, which it might be like over here. Dreamsicle sounds absolutely delightful though. Laurie, were you on Wipeout? No. 12 years ago or recently? 12 years ago.
Yes, 12 years ago. It was horrific.
So we've had Golden Globes, World Record Breaker, and on Wipeout. This is shaping up to really good tasting. Brilliant. That's fantastic. Yeah, I was going to say, we need a video, right? This will be great. Don't worry, Laura. I'm not going to put that on. It's like we're all just going to sit quietly until we bring that video up, right? So coffee candy. 15-year nose gets me bourbon light chocolate, honey brand muffin, absolutely. And the one thing is, I don't want to sway you, but the 15-year-old Balblair, if I had to choose any one of the first 4 SKUs or core SKUs, is that a dreamsicle, David? Very handy with these things. We call them, is it a Solero? No, it's not a Solero. We've got similar things. It's cream in the middle and then it's like a popsicle on the outside, right? Yeah. I got it. That's nice. That's a good tasting note.
Yeah, no, it's a really spot on tasting note that we every once in a while it kind of hits, and it's usually with ones that are crowd favorites.
Mm-hmm. But the one thing for me is the 15, and I don't want to sway you in any way. Again, this is personal opinion. For me, the 15-year-old's personally my favorite. The reason it's my favorite is we talk, and I mentioned this last night. Maurice and Derek will be sick of me because I'm very aware that they're listening to this some of these things again. But they're general to all whiskies. Is that when we age whiskey, a lot of people just assume that the longer that we age in a graph, for example, everything just all of a sudden it just gets better, which is rubbish. Older does not necessarily mean better. Older means rarer. It means that it means more complexity. But for you as an individual, it doesn't mean that it's better for you, right? Someone might love the 25-year-old, it's their absolute favorite, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be your favorite. So age doesn't necessarily mean that everything gets better, but what happens with age is complexity definitely increases. Rarity of flavor will increase as well. There's going to be flavors in older whiskies that you will not get in younger whiskies. But as we age, whiskey doesn't always just get better. There's certain things that will drop in whiskey. For example, peat lessens over time in whiskey. Some things will increase. Some things will hit an optimum point either for you as an individual or as a flavor note. They'll hit an optimum point along this age curve. So for me on the age curve for Balblair, the 15-year-old hits this almost sweet spot. 15 to 17, we've done a 17-year-old single cask in the past. And for 15 to 17-year-old, I just think it hits this lovely sweet spot. And it's funny enough, it's Old Pulteney 15 is also my favorite. It just hits this sweet spot of maturity still there, tasting notes are still there, and you're still getting that distillery character very prominent in the whiskey. And I absolutely love that. David, do you have a...
Yes, a question. What is the number, what's the production like for the 15-year? Is it in like our local markets, K&L, and other similar bottle shops, or are you in like the bigger stores?
So this one, it should be in K&L. Total Wine has a little allocation of it, but it's relatively small production. We bring in less than 1,009 liters a year on this one. And so, yeah, it's probably going to be more likely to be in like your K&Ls. So I'm in the Bay Area, so the whiskey shop is another one that's going to have it. I would assume Mission Spirits, if you're down near like SoCal, or Wally's is probably likely to have it as well. So,
and if a small bottle shop wanted to ask for it, would they be able to get it?
Yes, that shouldn't be a problem. So last year we had a lot of trouble getting it to people, partly because it was just launched in the US and trying to figure out that transition and I'm sure Stuart's going to talk about this in a little bit, that transition from doing vintage expressions to age statement expressions. So that was like a feeling out process to understand kind of like what was the market in for and things like that. And on top of that, we had the unexpected boon of the 15 being named a top 20 whiskey of 2020 by Whiskey Advocate. So that just exacerbated a limited stock situation. So long story short, we do have it in inventory now. So yeah, a local bottle shop is looking to get it. The team has my information. I can always put them in contact with our local salesperson as well. So yes, it's definitely something that's accessible.
Thank you, Derek.
Kerry, I just love, Kerry, I read your comment there where David's at the end of your barrel roll, as if like you're in the far distance and he's in the far distance of yours. That was pretty good. Just sitting at each end of this big warehouse. I love it. But the cask makeup for 15 before I disappear off of it, same concept as 12. So DCRC's refill hogshead, and then we're looking at up to 3 years in sherry. So specifically Oloroso sherry and majority second fill Oloroso sherry cask. Natural color again, and you're immediately seeing this difference in hue between the two, where we saw that paler, kind of very delicate, almost lemongrass color coming from the 12. We're now starting to see those darker tones come through into the 15, and that's that sherry influence. And the great thing about, the one thing I love about no caramel coloring is you can analyze a whiskey based on all its attributes. One thing I love to do is, go that blind tasting aspect, something that's poured in front of you, and you can work your way towards it. Because if there's caramel coloring in it, all bets are off. You can't really guess, right? You can maybe guess on palate and taste and nose, but it's very, very difficult to say with what cask makeup it is. But it's really refreshing to see liquids that there's nothing been done to it. The only thing that's been done to these whiskies is water's been added to control it down to 46%, and that's it. Nothing else has been done from cask into bottle.
So just to confirm, this is a finish. This is 12 years in the hoggy, and then finished for 3 years in a sherry cask.
Yeah, and the way that John likes to describe it is that it's been further matured in a sherry cask. There's no legal definition for what finishes versus further aging. Mm-hmm. My rule of thumb, because it is a rule of thumb, because depending on the context, the makeup of the new mixed spirit, 3 years to become Scotch whiskey in Scotland, right? So it takes 3 years to become Scotch whiskey in Scotland. So if anything is 3 years and over, I would say it's aging further, and anything 3 years or less, I would say it's finishing. However, having said that, if you have a delicate spirit like Balblair and you introduce it into a first fill Pedro Jimenez cask for 6 months, you're almost aging it. It's imparting so much flavor and intensity onto that liquid that you could argue that it's aging depending on the taste, and also the size of the cask, right? If you introduce it into a wee firkin, and I'm not swearing, that is the name, that is the style of the cask. It's not cursing, firkin. It's just great to say because you can say it as many times as you like, and you're not saying anything rude. But firkin, brilliant. The smaller the cask, the faster it'll age as well. So if you're introducing it into a butts or a barrique or whatever it may be, you're going to impart less intensity over a period of time. Whereas if you do it into a firkin or a quarter cask or something along that size, it's going to be really, really intense. So therefore that 6 months is almost, it's like that Interstellar, right? 10 hours here is 20 years on Earth. It's that whole thing is once you're in a firkin, it'll really, really increase that or rapidly increase that time of aging.
So I love this firkin whiskey.
Yeah, firkin whiskey. I mean, there's no firkin liquid in here. But it's someone's going to complain about this, but I'm saying FIRKIN, firkin. It has been recorded, so I'm not going to say the other one. And I said I wouldn't say the C word either this whole tasting because we've had enough of the C word. Any questions at this point? Does anyone want to talk about any questions about distillery or anything? But I'm going to go on and keep going otherwise. We're ready for number 3? Yeah. So we're moving on to Balblair 18-year-old. One thing I love about this is the bottle that comes out. Great reveal. Great reveal. Sliding doors. We won't talk about the cost of goods for the packaging, but it's lovely, lovely packaging. Derek's like, don't, please, no. So now we're moving into Balblair.
To say it took me 10 minutes to pull that bottle out of the box. And then after I was done, I realized that the top opens.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you're switching out, locking in. So Balblair 18, this is one of John's favorites as well. You can see this one's a lot lower than my other ones. This is one I do it's not that I go to it, it's just it's there and it's really bloody delicious. Balblair 18-year-olds, of course, youngest whiskey in the bottle is 18 years. And one thing I'll mention, have a nose, have a taste of it, is all the liquid that we have in the bottles for Balblair, all of that liquid is being aged at the distillery. So we've capacity for 21,500. Maurice, we went over it, you might be able to fact check me on that. 21,500 cases across our dunnage warehousing. 21,500 casks across our dunnage warehousing at Balblair Distillery, and all the liquid that you will find in Balblair bottles, all of it has been aged at the distillery. So we actually have casks aging at our office in Airdrie. We have capacity there for about 610,000 casks across our 50 warehouses in Airdrie. So we'll have Balblair casks there. Those casks will be either being held to then immediately transport to independent bottlers, or they'll be held for our blends. So Balblair does go into a couple of our blended scotches as well. But all the liquid for Balblair single malt is aged at distillery. We do not take any casks from elsewhere going into it. The one thing I love about this is all of a sudden the nose, I think we go from a kind of pineapple tropicaliness, Firkin tropicaliness. Then we delve into, for me, it becomes more mango. It softens, that sharpness softens a little bit, but that, for me, it's mango. And again, if you disagree, please disagree. That's the whole wonderful thing about tasting notes, is that we can just talk about this quite actively. Just looking at John Orlando, you've got a decent collection behind you. You must have a say on the 18. Am I going to get you on? There it is.
There we go. This collection is nothing compared to most of the people on here with you. I just happen to have it right in back of me.
You're flexing.
Yeah, I really, it's smoothed out for me a lot from the 12. It just feels a little more even and balanced, a little creamier. I'm digging it.
Yeah, nice.
I understand what you were saying though, Stuart, about like it's morphed into a little bit more mango. There's a little more tartness. Tartness isn't quite, it's just mellowed the sweetness a bit. And yeah. I guess, so I think that's where I think of it that way. And you're thinking of it as mango. Yeah. So I agree.
And as you say, it curbs the sweetness, because what we're doing is a further year in Oloroso sherry casks as well, roughly on average another year. And the reason I'm saying roughly on average is because casks react differently, right? One cask that's cut from the same tree, passed through the same bourbon distillery, comes to Scotland, and two different casks, the exact same tree, bourbon distillery, they'll react differently. The profile will always be the same. It'll always fall within this profile of flavor, but they will sit at different points on it. And that's what I love about whiskey, is that single casks especially, and what we're going to taste, is you will never, ever taste that again. And we'll talk about single casks in a second, but they'll always fall in that profile. And with the Balblair 18, as you say, it becomes a bit darker and broodier. And for me, it's not about necessarily dampening the sweetness, it's switching the sweetness. All of a sudden, the sweetness goes from citrus, candy sweetness into darker cinnamon syrup sweetness. It's like fruitcake and raisins, because that ramping up of Oloroso sherry cask. So it's not as sugary sweet as what we associate, but all of a sudden it's a bit darker and broodier that's coming into it. So if anyone's still got the 15, Jordan, I'm looking at you, your cups in your hotel room, probably not. But if anyone's still got the 15, have a nose back at it and see the difference, and see the graduation from 12, 15, 18, because of course, the exact same you make spirit, that's what makes it unique. And then it's the same concept casks for the 12, 15 and 18. And then the 15 and 18, you're looking at roughly 3 years in sherry, and then roughly 4 years in sherry, ex-Oloroso, predominantly second fill for the 15 and 18. So you'll see the graduation up. And then the 18, for me, it starts introducing those darker chocolate notes, darker raisin notes coming into it as well.
Stuart, what do you think in your process, in the Balblair process, gives it that unique Balblair flavor? Because I can taste it in the 12, the 15, the 18. I can taste Balblair, right? Yeah. It's very definitely Balblair spirits. But what is it? Is it the grain, do you think? Or is it the shape of your
Stills.
stills? Yeah, the stills. Yeah, what do you think it is?
It's a combination of all of it, but it definitely originates from New Mix Spirit. The one thing that John, as I'd mentioned, focuses on is quality, not quantity, running everything really, really slowly. So when we ferment for 60 hours on average, that's looking at introducing a lot more esters, and esters being a group of compounds that will produce those tropical notes and ripe fruit notes that people were talking about earlier in the tasting. And the one thing is that, has anyone ever tasted wash before? Sorry, not has anyone ever tasted wash, the beer, while it's fermenting before it goes into the stills? And some of you might have, some of you might not. Has anyone in biology, when they're in school, I always remember this, is when you're in school, did you ever do the yeasts experiment and get shown fermentation, you smelt it, it was one of the worst things that you've ever smelled? Some of you, again, might have done it, some of you might not have. There's only, when we ferment at Balblair, there's only, I think, a handful of distilleries whose wash I've tasted that I could drink a half pint of and wouldn't send it back. A wash is not always the most attractive thing or the most delicious thing. So Glengoyne is one of them. They do a very slow fermentation. Glengoyne's wash is absolutely delicious. I think it's Glenmorangie's wash I've tasted as well, not for just around the corner from Balblair, coincidentally, and Balblair. So when we were there, John tells it as if he had to drag me off of the wash. He's talking rubbish. If any of you join a tasting with John, he's lying. He's absolutely lying. I might remember it differently, but we basically kind of dogged the wash, brought it back up, and we were drinking it, and it's palatable. It's very fragrant and sweet and very tropical, fruity. And wash isn't always like that. I would argue 90% of the time it's going to be quite astringent and not necessarily the most tasty thing. So that is, once we have our wash, we're then distilling it twice, and it's a long level of distillation. We're running it very, very slow. And then shell and tube condensers as well, they'll strip a lot of those, or it's increasing, it's not necessarily increasing copper contact, but it's the way in which it runs through it. So it's stripping those kind of sulfury notes as well and leaving you with that sweeter level condensation. David, you've got a cat as well. You're just showing off all these backgrounds. So that's it, right? And then the one thing I'll talk about is, New Mix Spirit is unique. The way I always talk about it is every single distillery has its own unique DNA. I always look at it as in every single distillery is a family, and the blood of that family is effectively New Mix Spirit. So you've got, you, your auntie, your uncle, your mum, dad, sisters, brothers, cousins, you share the same bloodline. You're all part of that distillery. So single malt is blended. It just takes multiple casks from the same distillery. So you can get all your family members together in one room, and you're still, that family name, you're still, Mr. and Mrs. Balblair and the Balblair family or the Glengoyne family in one room. But that's what makes it unique. As soon as you take out one individual cask, and we'll talk about this, you take out you as an individual cask or family member, then that becomes one single cask, one characteristic of that distillery. But that's what I attribute it to, and I went on a massive tangent there, is that's what I attribute it to, is the creation of the New Mix Spirit is so crucial, because that needs to be the same every single time. But also the way that we treat that New Mix Spirit in cask allows you to elongate that distillery character. Because as I said, if we put Balblair into first fill Pedro Jimenez casks, you'll see the distillery character for, I would say, 4 years, 5 years, and then the distillery character will disappear, but you'll still be left with an absolutely lovely whiskey, right? It's not saying that the whiskey is going to be bad, but the distillery character won't be as apparent as it would be in a DCRC refill hogshead. And that was the objective of Balblair, is to lengthen and show off that distillery character for as long as possible within the core range. Obviously, when we get to single casks, that's about experimenting and being playful with the spirit. Long answer there, Kate. Very appreciative of it. So hope that answered it. Jane, there's an espresso note in the finish that I'm totally loving, 100%. For me, it's very fresh espresso. It's not that kind of bitter, astringent espresso. It's really, really fresh. And it's almost like it's been topped off in a little bit of hot milk, like kind of macchiato style, like really, really short, fresh espresso. Yeah, I'm really glad you picked up on that. That's something I always see in Balblair when we get to it. Creaminess like heavy cream, sugar, coffee, dark chocolate, absolutely redeem as well. A s'mores finish. I do love s'mores. I do love s'mores. But it's yeah, and we'll go on to the 25 in just a second. But Derek was talking about our vintages. Is anyone aware of our vintages that we've done in the past. I saw, Gary, you had one, right? Gary, is that a miniature of it, the 1990? I got it delivered the other day. I won in the raffle, the full-size 1990 and the company raffle that we had hidden away. I'll send you it.
Kate, what were you showing off? I mean, Carrie, what were you showing off?
What else we got?
So when I went, I got the 89 and the 1990. And of course they're gone now, but they're really cute bottles.
Yeah.
I
So
wanted to get bigger ones, but I had a lot to bring home and there's only so much I could bring.
That extra suitcase didn't go far, right?
The 1990,
it's
wasn't
for
that like
the
a
duties.
29-year-old?
I'm not sure how many we did. I think we bottled that in 2014, so it's 24. Well, the one I've got is the 1990 bottled in 2014. Kerry, you might have the bottling date on that as the miniature as well. I'm not sure if we put it on the miniatures. 24 years, but there might have been another 1990 that might have been a 29-year-old with him, because I know we did multiple vintages as well. So
yeah, I think that was
one.
the confusing thing with the vintage releases, was they got a lot of praise. Everybody loved, like, the 1990 was a huge follower one, but you had to know which edition you had, because they had like multiple releases and they were different ages.
This one says second release.
Okay, so probably is a little older.
So we'll most likely be a little older. Yeah,
the two cask strength, the two single casks that we have are both vintage releases. It's a 2005 and a 2006.
Nice. And this is the thing, is that, we talked about this, and when I was at the London Whiskey Show, people were dragging me over the counter saying, what did you do to my vintages? And it's like, we didn't do anything. It's what we released in 2019 is our core SKUs, and that's what we should have been doing from the very beginning. Because when we release vintages, like, fantastic, now we've got the opportunity to still do that as a limited edition and run them. But when we were releasing vintages, they were depleting left, right, and center, and all of a sudden it just wasn't having that consistency level with liquid and or brand. And now we're in an opportunity where we have an established brand. So if you enjoy a Balblair vintage or enjoy a Balblair, whatever it may be, you can purchase a Balblair and have that on your shelf as a consistent bottling. And that's the issue, right? And so many people were adamant that I'll bring back the vintages, but at the end of the day, we didn't have an opportunity to talk about, what goes into it. We didn't have an opportunity to do tastings on a regular basis and have consistency with talking about John and his long hair and how bloody handsome the man is. Talking about the stills and talking about wash and everything like that. We didn't have that opportunity with the vintages, and now we do. And now we're in a position where we can actually release limited editions and potentially bring back vintages as limited editions and more interesting cask finishes and actually experiment a little bit more. But we would never have had that opportunity if we just continued with vintages and just threw them out willy-nilly. And obviously it creates a lot of animosity, because I love the 1990 second release. It's like, well, you're never getting it again, ever. You're never going to get it again. Not possible. And that creates like, oh, right, okay. So you don't have that consistency with liquid, and therefore you don't have that, you're not able to favor certain people. So it was annoying, but I think what we're doing now is the right thing that we should have been doing from the very beginning.
Well, I think that's the nice thing about, the expressions that you're talking about in different vintages is that you're not going to be able to get that again. And that if you're lucky to be able to have had it, then you can really truly appreciate it. I think that most of us as aficionados of whiskeys and spirits understand that and embrace it and know that that's just part of the game, which is why we really enjoy some of our bottle shares that we have been to, that we all get to kind of share and enjoy. There's been a couple of expressions that I've brought that people have not had, and likewise. So it's a hell of a lot of fun, Stuart. And I think it's exciting to kind of hear you guys kind of developing and kind of working through and, just offering these very unique and so far exceptional expressions. Yeah.
And as you say, like, I adore single casks, but it's always nice to be able to have something on your shelf I can just go back to that every single time, and there's going to be consistency in that liquid. But yeah, I mean, you'll see over my head, my shoulder, I've got, single casks, and it's one thing I love, and I love that fleeting concept, but you just can't get too attached, because.
So the 12, 15, and 18 are the core expressions.
And the 25.
And the 25. And those are going to be that way. They're going to be really close within a very narrow range of flavor profiles from one year to the next.
Yeah. The whole idea is it's going to be they're going to be married and produced in a way that's going to be consistent. So it's always going to be same concept casks, same ABV, non-chill filtered, no caramel coloring, And that's going to create that level of consistency. And then from there, I can almost guarantee that we're going to start releasing, we will release and have released single cask bottlings as well. So there's going to be limited editions. That's the whole point of doing this, is just making sure that someone can still have a Balblair on their shelf that's going to be consistent, and they're going to be able to enjoy it day in, maybe not day in, day out. Take that back. Weekend in, weekend out. Safe?
Oh no, you can say day in, day out.
Okay, cool. That's fine. Safe place, right? Safe space. Right. Are we ready for 25-year-old?
Yes.
All right. What was everyone doing 25 years ago? Okay, anything to another world record? $25 years.
I think I was graduating college.
baseball.
Graduating college.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Julius, what were you saying?
I would say I was playing AA baseball.
Nice. How old
And
would you
then
have been,
after that-
Julius, at AA?
The White Sox.
Right, okay. Nice.
Oh yeah, and then and I got a knee injury that same 25 years ago.
Who else? Any admissions? Any? Oh, Jane, you're looking quite guilty.
Love it. I was 31 years old, and I cannot remember for the life of me what I was doing.
Oh yeah, wait a minute. I wasn't graduating college. I had too much to drink. I couldn't do the math. Sorry. Jane was just in her getting out of shorts, right? You were just in your shorts that time. Sorry, that's a weird expression in the United
Shorts and
States.
diapers, you mean?
Yeah.
You're muted, Jane.
I was working on movies, so I'm trying to think which one I was on at the time, but it's like Titanic or something.
Okay, right.
I don't know. I've lost track. I mean, I've worked on a lot of them, so.
Jane, you need to remember if it was Titanic. You need to remember and tell us the story right now.
Well, it's more like trying to remember what year it was. Because yikes.
It's 97?
I was like 96 or 97.
Yeah.
What was 25 years ago? Is that right?
It was 98, and I have to take that back. I was just graduating high school, and then going to Concordia playing ball.
Babies. Oh my God, you're all
Yeah.
babies.
And Justin had his first deployment into Desert Storm.
Done, Justin.
Yeah.
Not all of
Desert.
us are babies.
Not just first deployment. Desert Storm was before I joined. United Arab Emirates was the first place I went to.
Gotcha.
Nice little dirty tent city with nothing but tents.
That would be crazy. Stuart, this is unusually good questions from a presenter. We're usually the ones with the questions, so this is kind of nice. Thank you.
Yeah, you're stumping us by asking us about
That's
us.
You can give me it back. You can give me it back soon. So 25 years,
to be fair,
long time. But the one thing I always think about when we get to the 25 year mark is that when we introduce this into cask, and again, same concept cask, the DCRCs, the refill hogsheads, and then we're looking at about 5 years in predominantly first fill Oloroso sherry cask. I think that's very apparent on the color, much, much darker, no caramel coloring. But when we get to 25 year mark, we start seeing and start thinking about, it's a long period of time. The person who put this into cask is more than likely retired at this point, more than likely retired. But it's a long time for something to just be sitting and waiting in cask for us then to be, when you think about the people that put this into cask, the casks that were selected for this specific expression, this becomes even more romantic when we talk about individual casks. But what are the chances that those, and we'll talk about this with casks as well, but what are the chances that those single casks and the casks that went into this Balblair 25-year-old were selected, bottled in this specific batch, and then this group of people 25 years later are doing it over Zoom after, and I'm not going to say the C word, but after a very specific crappy 2 years, are then drinking it and consuming that exact same liquid together. And this becomes even more romantic when it comes to an individual cask. So all the liquid in that single cask that you guys will be tasting, what are the chances that all of you then, the amount of time later, are, so all the journeys in your lives that have taken you to this Zoom meeting that was You know, it was not a thing 25 years ago, I then consuming that same liquid. So the last dram that I've got from the skew, but I'll be talking you through the Balblair and we'll talk about some other things. But cheers, Slange. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for being with us.
Yeah. I want Julius to come off of mute because he's got some interesting notes over here.
Yeah. So it's totally not Scotch again because I get this overwhelming tropical rum experience in Ocean Spray. It's playing tricks on me, but in a Maui, chilling in the beach.
It's crazy because I have this Trinidad rum that's pretty old as well, and the smell and nose brings me back to that. And the 18 was kind of there. Now this is like more potent. So
Yeah.
and it's like I feel like it's a mixture of like something. It doesn't taste like Scotch to me, but it's beautiful. It's amazing. I love it.
I think for me, and the way I described this at London at the whiskey show was if a whiskey could sing, like the Balblair 25 sings, it almost celebrates itself. There's just all those tropical fruity notes. And Jane, was it yourself that was talking about the coffee notes as well, right? That for me, the coffee note subsides a little bit, and then all of a sudden it's, instead of dark, like bitter, maybe like 70% cacao, it's back to like milk chocolate sweetness. For me, again, like please disagree with that if you want, but now all of a sudden those fermented fruits, ripe fruits have come back to the forefront, but now there are things like peach and stone fruits coming into it. It's much more, it's not overly sharp. It's a bit more fruit salad based. And then at the back is those broodier, darker ones that I was talking about, that milk chocolate. I think the cinnamon still's there, raisins coming into it, demerara sugar as well. Yeah, tropical fruits, coffee, chocolate, plum and peach. And leather from Anna and Haddam. Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of sweet tobacco, leather. I mean, 25 years is a long, long time. And I know I'm stressing that, but there's so much complexity once you get to 25 years. And a lot of people will actually argue 25 years is beyond where you should actually age whiskeys. I know we've got things that are 30, 35, 50 years old, and you can do that now. But, when we get to 25 years, this is almost a lot of people consider to be cut off for whiskey aging. A lot of people think this is the precipice for ensuring that level of quality.
So what you're saying is we shouldn't bring in your 50-year-old. Got it. Okay.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. The thing is now, like, we
I guess
we
it
have
just
the technology and understanding to produce whiskies at 50 years old and produce them beautifully because we know how to treat them, right? We know that how we should be aging them and how we should, if we need to transfer them and what we need to do with them. But you look 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years was, a old whiskey. And then now I can guarantee a lot of us have probably tried a 30-year-old on a special occasion or whatever it may be and trying and sampling one and we've probably all done it now, but that was not a thing. That would not have been a thing 25 years ago.
Absolutely. This is quite a treat. But while we have this in our hands and Stuart still has a little in his glass, can I get everyone to come back on camera? Julius, hop on camera. Come on. Shane.
I'm here.
Brendan.
Okay.
Blair. Let's get everyone to smile. Aaron, there we go. So I just want to raise a glass. Stuart, thank you for spending the early morning, late evening with us. Want to welcome, I'm sorry, your colleague's new name? Maurice, thank you. Sorry, 4 drams in. Welcome, Maurice. Thank you for organizing this, Derek. We really appreciate it. And cheers to everyone. Cheers to you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Salute.
Perfect. Thank you all.
Before we move on to thank you, Vidina. That was lovely. Before we move on to the single cast, the one thing I want to talk about is our logo, if anyone's seen it. So just at the top here, you've got your 2 circles.
It's also the thing you're wearing in your lapel.
It is. Sharp eye, David. Look at that. So, the first thing that you'll see is established 1790, which marketing like to talk about. It's one of the oldest in the Highlands. I like to talk about the fact that it's one of the oldest in Scotland. It truly is. It's one of the oldest distilleries in Scotland. The majority of distilleries that you'll see will be 1824, 1825, 1826, around that range. And the reason being is in 1823, I'm a big whiskey geek and history buff when it comes to whiskey. I absolutely adore it. But in 1823, you had the Excise Act. And a lot of people think that this is when Scottish whisky distilleries were allowed to take out a distillery license, when in fact the Excise Act just passed that it was a much more affordable for distilleries to take out a license. And that's why you see so many distilleries with some in 1823, but normally 1824, 1825, 1826, and around that era. So for a distillery as far north as Ederton, which is pretty far north, it's beyond Inverness in Scotland, for a place like Ederton to have taken a license in 1790 would have taken a lot of guts, and bravery to do so, because you're so far north in terms of your trade routes, but also a decent amount of backing. The 1790, it makes it one of the oldest distilleries in Scotland. I can absolutely guarantee you that. And there's not going to be many that are much older. But the logo still is one of my absolute favorite stories, and on my lapel badge as well. Just outside the distillery, there is a farmer's land that I'm just outside. And on that farmland is a standing stone called the Clach Bioraich. So you can actually look this up. If you type in, if anyone's on Google, you can type in standing stone Ederton. So there's a standing stone that sits, and it's a spiked thin stone that sits in this farmland. And archaeologists estimate that it was erected about 4000 BC. So 4000 BC. And they estimate that it was, or they suggest that it was raised to celebrate the death place of a Viking jarl that would have inhabited that area of Scotland back then. So it's a standing stone that's been standing for that length of time. And on this stone, if you look it up, you can see, standing stone Ederton. We call it the Clach Bioraich, which is Gaelic for standing stone. You have printed on it and embedded into the stone is that symbol that I was showing you there. So that symbol's embedded on the stone. And the two circles, archaeologists estimate that it's representative of the sun and the moon and the passage of time. And then the line, we call it the Z rods, that passes through with the X at the bottom, is life and then death. So that passage of life and death. And if you see the photo on Google, if you do find it, the circular sections, I had a tasting, was it 5 months ago? I did a tasting and somebody mentioned, like, how did they get the circular shape? Like, how did they manage to do that? And I was like, how would they manage to do that? If you asked me to do that with a hammer and chisel, if I had even the equipment, I don't think I'd be able to do a perfect circle. So I always thought that was quite imaginative. But this carving itself was estimated about 1800 to 2000 BC, and it was carved by the Picts. So the Picts being a very ancient race. Thank you.
We lost Stuart. Stuart, you froze up for about 10 seconds.
Okay, cool.
I was going to say that was an interesting pause for effect. I like that.
The one thing for it is that it's the hairs in the back of your neck moment when you're standing there in front of this thing and realizing that, 6,000 years ago, this stone estimated was raised. And then 4,000 years ago, estimated someone stood where I stood and carved on this stone, which I think it really is, chills. And the one thing we noticed after a while is that there was these, mud stains on the quite high up on the stone. I'm like, what the hell's happening? And then we realized that the Highland cows had been scratching themselves on this 6,000-year-old stone. So we had to erect a very simple fence around it. So you can still walk right up to the stone, but just to stop the cows potentially knocking over very, very important piece of history, we had to erect a simple fence around it. And a lot of people, one thing we don't talk about marketing, but one thing I love is when we drive up next to it. So you've got the road that separates one piece of farm and then just a small field on the other side. On the other side of the field, you actually have stones that are representative of the hills that surround Balblair Distillery. So surrounding Balblair Distillery, you have these stones that surround it. And on the other side of this fence, you have rocks that have been embedded that are the exact shape of all the hills that surround Balblair Distillery. And archaeologists were saying that it's actually representative of them tracking the stars and star systems all the way back. And this would have been 2000 BC, not 4000. This would have been roughly 2000 BC. They erected these stones and put them in such a position that they show the hills so that you'd be able to sit look up at the hills and the stones with the hills in the background, and then track the stars basis these stones. And for me, I think it's absolutely fascinating, and it's chills moments when it's thinking, you know, how advanced were they in comparison to us? I have the time and month and date on my phone, and these guys were sitting and tracking stars, and you know, that's such an amazing level of intelligence. But again, the brand and the symbol works really well for us at Balblair, because our key focus, and always has been our key focus all the way back to when we revitalized the distillery in 1951, has been low, slow production of new make spirit. Nothing is done at a fast pace that's making sure that everything that we do is ensuring quality over quantity. As I said, John does not care if he misses his targets for litres of alcohol. He wants to ensure that he's making sure that the liquid that goes into these casks is of the best, or his quality, his standard, not even the best, his standard of quality. But having said that, we're going to move on to our 2 single casks. Ready for this?
Before we do that, Stuart,
Yeah,
did you want to throw up a poll?
Yeah, that seems like a good idea. I said, let's see what people think as they're. I mean, is it really fair to throw up the OG lineup, including the 25?
Yeah, go for it. Why not? Maria, I just saw where does the tobacco taste come from? For me, it's the cask. I always think tobacco, and you know, the original flavor profile could potentially come from the new make spirit, but the cask is what's developing that into a tobacco flavor profile. For me, so that's where it's coming from.
All right, thank you.
Oh, Derek, that looks good.
That 25 was, I'm sorry, that was something special.
Oh, Vadim, you've swayed me.
You guys caught me getting my dinner going.
Thank you for the final option there, Vadim, because I don't know that it's fair to compare these. I mean, yeah, these are just every single one of them. I could drink any day of the week, I think.
Stuart,
yeah.
Kate has been on a lot of virtual tastings with me. She's never said that.
Wow. Thank you very much. Wonderful to hear. It's really, really wonderful to hear. I think John and the team have done an exceptional job with Balblair. And has anyone ever seen Angel Share, by the way? The movie?
I was going to ask if you're going to bring that up. I love that movie. Own it.
So if anyone's seen Angel Share, it's a comedy movie about this, revered single cask that goes on auction. But it's actually, and Kerry's got the shot up. So that's Balblair Distillery there.
I took that photo.
You took it?
I took it. It's beautiful. It was a great rainy day, and it was finally cleared up for 5 minutes.
Lucky. Gary, I'm going to ask you to keep that up, because after the single cask, I'll talk about the shape of the distillery and why we have it in that specific shape. But if anyone's seen Angel Share, the movie, I recommend you watch it. It's absolutely brilliant. But they filmed that up at the distillery. So they actually filmed that up at Balblair Distillery, and that's where, even in the dunnage warehousing, we actually had many of the people that still work there were in the background rolling casks, and were in, popping the casks open. So it's quite cool. One of the guys you'll see is John Ross, that was rolling.
Huh. Uh-oh, lost him.
He'll be back.
Did I freeze again? Sorry.
You did, yep.
Yeah. John McDonald was too rugged and too young looking to be a distillery manager for it. So someone else was cast in his place. So that was a good laugh. He enjoyed that that compliment. It was good.
All right, so we did the vote. I think just about everyone voted. Stuart, you want to take a guess of what was the crowd favorite?
I think it's going to be 25.
It's got to be the 25. Yeah, 38% voted 25, but 29% voted all of the above.
I'll take that. Yeah. That's good. That's good to see.
Yeah, I don't normally throw in an all of the above option because I want to force people to choose, but there hasn't been a bad one tonight So I had to include that because I knew I was going to get complaints. I knew. I'm looking at you all. I knew I was going to get flack for not throwing that in.
Well, we are not short of complaining.
So yeah, so that was fantastic. But now we're looking forward to. I know this group, and I know this group likes their cast strength. So we had to throw in a few cast strength expressions. So if you want to talk about these single casks, we can try them.
So before you do that, Stuart, obviously you have a barrel program.
Yep. Yeah. No, of course, we've got wood policy. We've got cask programs that we have in place. About Maurice, we were talking about this the other night. Was it 90%, 95% of our casks held are ex-American oak, so that includes hogsheads and barrels, and then it's roughly 5 to 7% are, I think it's butts. Is that right? And then
yeah, and I know, not to deviate, but I know that was a decision for Speyburn in particular, that the American oak, it really lends itself to American oak.
Yeah.
Whereas a sherry finish, unless it's a higher age, when you get into the 15s and higher, it'll overtake it. So I think as a whole, American oak just plays well with our new make in each distillery.
Absolutely. And then we've got at Balblair, we've got I think 1% roughly, and 1%'s decent, but 1%'s experimental, and purely experimental for the point of view that let's see, with you're always going to have that. Every distillery will most likely have that, is the number of casks that it's, let's throw it in here and see what we can do with it. What's going to happen to it, what's going to change, what's going to develop, and how is it going to work, and can we realistically release this as a commercial bottling. The great thing is I get to taste all of it before it goes, so that's fun. That's fun. I hate my job, right?
For you.
A terrible job. So we're.
Can I
sorry.
ask a question?
Of course.
Okay, so since you were saying that the distillery was founded in 1790, so like over 200 years ago, what were they using? I mean, obviously they weren't using American oak. So what was being used back then?
1790, there was no requirement to age whiskey at all.
Okay.
Whiskey aging only came in. Someone can please fact check this for me. It was actually George Smith's nephew. Could check this for me. George Smith, who was the founder of Glenlivet, which I'm sure a lot of you will have heard. George Smith's nephew was the first person to introduce cask aging for a minimum of 2 years, and then it was up to 3 years. I think 5 or 6 years later. But back in 1790, whiskey is not the whiskey that we know it as. Whiskey was effectively moonshine. It was spirit off the stills and bottled. That was it. So back then there was no aging whatsoever. It wasn't until trades globally and even into kind of mainland Europe started quite heavily, and then people were obviously putting it into casks purely from a storage point of view because they wouldn't leak. And then all of a sudden, the further that you went, the longer that they were sitting or traveling. It was months at a time, and all of a sudden, people were getting whiskey in, say Australia or really far afield, and they were going, "Why is this? This isn't what I remember from home. This has got a darker color to it. It's got this is actually really tasty. This is much more palatable." And that's when whiskey aging was like, "All right, we can actually do something here to make it a bit more easier to drink." Not that the Scottish really cared, still probably don't. But it wasn't until, someone can check the date for me, but I'm sure it's 1830s, 1840s, that cask aging actually became I think 1790s, we were not using casks. And actually the original casks that were used were wine casks, port casks, sherry casks more predominantly, whereas now bourbon casks are far more predominant, purely because sherry casks, no one really drinks sherry anymore, whereas bourbon is massive all over the world. It's huge. Every single bar worth its salt will have at least 3 to 4 bourbons on its shelf. So bourbon casks are in high supply and therefore cheaper to buy. It doesn't diminish the quality of these casks. It's just purely because of the demand for bourbon. And then sherry, they're more expensive to buy because the sherry demand is slow. So to answer your question directly, going on bloody Billy Connolly tangents, 1790, they wouldn't have aged at all. It would have just been unique spirit.
And then it would.
I think there was, I'm sorry, like similarities with Scotland and here, because we took all the Highlanders during the Highland clearance, and they were making whiskey. That was their currency. They couldn't afford. I mean, the fact of aging whiskey wouldn't even occur to them.
Yeah.
Any surplus grain. They distilled that, so that was your preservation. That's what we had the whiskey rebellion. It's like, you can't tax me. I don't have any money. I can give you some whiskey, some moonshine, but you know, that's my currency for the farmers there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Jacqueline, did you have a follow-up question? Sorry.
So then, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to put it all in a timeline for my head. So
All right,
then
yeah.
then we're hitting the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and more trade is happening. So they're getting the wine casks from France and going from Portugal and Spain and
Yeah.
wherever else. Okay.
Yeah, exactly that. And the reason it was is because we realized that we could age in casks, and then we were trading really heavily with the likes of France, Spain. It's a really crap joke is that, you know, British, there's no hiding, you know, British colonization, there's this British flag and half the world's bloody flags, right? So UK oak, specifically oak, obviously we have to age in oak, is great for building ships and sailing across the world because it's not porous, you know, it's really, really tight. Aging whiskey, it's not so great because you need the oak to be porous. So the casks, we quickly realized that it made it really horrible in taste. So when we were trading with France and Spain and Portugal, port cities especially, what you had coming in was sherries, you had wines, you had ports, you had all these lovely different aged fermented fruits that were coming in. And that's the casks that we had great access to. Because at that point, you know, way prior to Industrial Revolution, we would not have had the dealings with bourbon distilleries that we now have, right? We wouldn't have had that access to wood. And of course, bourbon distillery now, it's aged in a cask. And once that cask once it's been taken out, you have to then get rid of that cask. And we are the Scottish whiskey industry has to be the biggest buyer of those casks. Surely it must be.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I remember one of my favorite stories of how they discovered that aging whiskey helps make it better was essentially like kings would have casks of whiskey in their cellar and they try it and then they go off to war, come back 2 years later and try the same whiskey and be like, oh crap, this is way better. All right, maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, but that's it, right? It was just a happy accident. Otherwise, we would all be drinking clear liquids and Scottish moonshine right now.
And some of us still do.
Yeah, damn straight, right? So we're ready for your first single cask?
We are. So this is an 05 from Wally's, and I believe it's a somebody correct me if I'm wrong, 13-year-old?
So I unfortunately don't have this liquid, so I'm going to be sitting here in jealousy. I've poured myself another 25, but but I'm going to sit here and.
You did mention you got an 05, and I didn't want to be the bearer of bad news that yours is not the same as ours.
No, I've got the 05 next door, but I promised that to my dad for a Christmas present, so I'm waiting on it arriving.
Nice.
But that's the thing is there's strings attached to that gift, is that he has to open it with me. So there is strings attached, but I have gifted that to him, so I'll let him open it.
Yeah, so this one is 2005 Balblair. I'm trying to pull it up. So this is their single cask exclusive, and it's, gosh, why doesn't it say how old this is? Yeah, 13 years old. Yep. And when I was selecting this cask, I hope the group doesn't mind. It was either I could get an 05 original bottling, official bottling, or I can get an 05 single cask strain. Hope you don't mind. I went with the cask strain.
Yeah. Do they still have more of these?
They do.
I saw someone saying the nose has a high alcohol vapor, and yeah, 55.4%. Is that right, Vadim?
It is. Yep.
Yeah. So 55.4% is not a dare. I just want to point that out. So many people, we take, people, well, once travel was a thing, we had people coming over from all over the world, and they would take them to bars and whiskey bars in Glasgow, Edinburgh, wherever it was. And then they would get a cask strength whiskey and they would sip it, and I could see them grimacing. And I'm like, are you enjoying that? And they're like, it's quite intense. it is quite intense. It's something like 58% or 55%, and I'm like, that distilleries offer you cask strength or even high strength whiskey is that it allows you as the consumer to dictate how you drink it. That's it. Add water if you need to, bring it down. It's not a dare. Don't feel that you have to drink it cask strength. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to drink it at cask strength. That is rubbish. If you want to add ice, if you want to add water, please do so. When we're analyzing whiskey, the best thing to do for me is room temperature water, drip by drip, until you get it to a point that you're enjoying it. That for when you're analyzing it, when you're enjoying it, you do whatever the hell you want to. Whatever the fucking thing you want to do with it, you do it. That's what you do.
Surprisingly, this cask strength is very smooth. Like it's no heat. It's sweet and smooth.
Nice. What's the cask that you selected, Vadim? Apologies, I caught you mid-sip. That's my fault.
So the Wally's, I believe, is ex-bourbon, at least based on the color. And the next one we're going to try, K&L, it's a sherry cask, exclusive sherry cask.
Nice.
For me, the Wally's tastes like bourbon. I mean, I can taste the underlying Balblair structure, but I don't know. If you told me it was a bourbon, I'd be like, okay, I guess I could believe you. You know what I mean? And a blind tasting anyway. Very strong compared to your others.
So
really different. Really different.
This one, it's actually first fill ex-bourbon as opposed to kind of what you're seeing with a lot of the other ones that we tasted tonight. So that's probably why you're getting such a strong bourbon character on this one.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm getting a lot
very
of
cherry.
Very buttery, very vanilla on this.
Yeah, I can imagine, like first fill, especially, what we were tasting with the 12, which is probably a very good parallel with this, is because the 12 is all ex-American oak. DCRC, your D-char, rechar, and the refill hogshead is probably a good kind of comparison, because all of those, DCRC is going to be at least third fill, and then your refill hogshead is the fourth time those staves have been filled. So what you're tasting is new make spirit from Balblair, which is always going to be the same, is always going to be consistent in a individual first fill bourbon cask. So that's really, really going to add it up.
It's interesting that you said that, Stuart, because the colors of those two are almost identical.
Yeah.
And I mean, the age is almost identical too. It's a 13 to a 12 ex-bourbon cask. But it's really delicious. And just like Julia said, on the nose, you can get a little bit of the alcohol, but on the palate, it is just butter. Just butter.
Oh,
goes down so easy.
Yeah,
Stuart,
it
if you only
reminds me
knew
of
someone in the States that could send you a bottle, someone in the industry, someone with a name starts with D, ends with Eric.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm actually drinking, I think, the last one that we had.
You can stop. No, enjoy it.
When you make it to the States, I'll definitely make sure I've saved some for you.
No, don't worry. Enjoy it.
You remember
a little bit of water to
this?
This one, it was exceptional. Really opened it up.
Yeah.
The one thing I was going to say, allow Kerry to change her background if she wants. If you look at Kerry's background, sorry, Kerry, I'm using you as an example. If you look at Kerry's background, just to talk about the distillery and the shape of it, this is when you drive down. You actually drive down very parallel onto it, and it's a very straight shot. As you can see, it's very linear. It's building after building after building all the way down. And Balblair is one of the most efficiently designed. So great watching Kerry disappear for 2 seconds. It's great watching Balblair disappear into itself. Because what you actually have is one of the most efficiently designed. Fantastic. Sorry, Kerry. You have one of the most efficiently designed distilleries, because at the very back, you have the old floor maltings, which is now our visitor centre. The old floor maltings that when we've come into the drying floor where you can see the pagoda, that's the original pagoda, designed by Charles Doig, who also designed Speyburn Distillery. And then once it dries, you would pass that onto the mills, which is the next building over, and then you would have it into the wort, into your malt bins, into your wort, and then you would have into your washbacks and filled with yeast. And then you have the stills in the next room, and then they would be rolled out where this Jeep is on the left-hand side. The casks would have been rolled out and into the dunnage warehousing, which is on our left, Kerry's right. So it was just this one linear process that then came straight out the front door and into the dunnage warehousing on the side.
Yeah, we did see, if you turn my picture, you could have seen a bunch of piles of barrels that were being moved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all there, all one linear process. Whereas if, for example, if you go to Old Pulteney, it's a gorgeous distillery. It's absolutely stunning, but it's more, we would say, higgledy-piggledy. If anyone's ever used that word. Is anyone familiar with that word? I used that once in a tasting. I was like, what the hell? It's probably more of a Scottish thing. It's higgledy-piggledy. Everything's kind of thrown together. But it's it's not linear, let's say. You know, it's more circular and rounded, and everything's a bit more bitty. But Balblair has this really efficient run. And all of those buildings are original buildings from when we moved the distillery in 1947. I can't remember. 1947, we moved the distillery, but this is all original buildings and all original sandstone from them. Sorry, Kerry. Thank you. That was that was it. We can jump back to grid view for everyone if you'd like, or gallery view. So I've seen some really nice tasting notes from you guys. Cinnamon butter sugar, toasted multigrain bread. That sounds absolutely amazing. Cinnamon toast, grilled apple, cinnamon, minty flavor. Oh, amazing. You let me know when you're done, because I was always dictating the tasting basis my drinking. So when you're ready, you throw on.
Vadim, what was the price on this bottle?
$90.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
$90 for a single cask Balblair. Okay.
Whatever they have left, let's buy them out. Tell them I sent you.
Use the Vadim 10 at checkout.
Get nothing off. Oh my goodness. Let's move on to the sherry cask. We got to try this. Oh my goodness.
Vadim, oh my God. I'm going to tell you right now, this can't be cask strength. Too dead. It can't.
56.2.
It can't be that.
And the only way this sold out in 2019. The only way I was able to get this bottle was because some of you may know a Qua who had this bottle saved up.
Qua,
and he let me buy it off him.
Of course, Qua has everything.
I told him 6 months out that Derek and I were planning this. So he was like, "Can I open it?" I'm like, "No, we're gonna save it for the tasting. The group's gonna enjoy it. You can't drink it." He goes, "All right, I'll drink something else." Pulls out like a 25-year-old something else.
The nose on this thing is ridiculous.
Right?
This thing is amazing.
I just thought this would be fun because Balblair, everything we've tried so far has been a majority in ex-bourbon and then secondarily aged in sherry. This is its whole life in sherry for 13 years. So different.
Pat, did you have a Pat Coffee? Did you have a bottle there?
I do. Yeah, it's one of my favorites, honestly, and I've been savoring every last drop of it, and it's getting to the point where the oxygen is more than the liquid, so I'm gonna need to drink it before it oxidizes. But it's really good, and I'm bummed I didn't get more than one of these when it came out.
When it oxidizes, you'll have a different style of whiskey. It'll change slightly, right? It'll, be good. Your second name, you were named after a still, right?
Aeneas Coffee. Apparently, according to Ancestry, there is a distant relation. I'm unaware. My family's unaware, but Ancestry says that's the case.
That's pretty cool. So for anyone who doesn't know, you have the coffee still, which was not designed but perfected. It was designed by a Scotsman, perfected by an Irishman. I need to throw that in. I need to throw that in. It was designed by a guy called...
I'm gonna need to have you on Barrel Room Chronicles so we can talk about your lineage.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I literally know nothing other than Ancestry tells me there's a distant relation. No family members.
We'll call what's his name from PBS? What's his name? Lewis something Jr. He does that
Gates.
ancestry. Yeah, Louis Gates Jr. He does that ancestry show.
I was thinking Louis Gossett Jr., but
Yeah,
same
no,
thing.
different one.
Brian, are
can
you
go-
upside down?
Idaho probably
I
has
am.
you
I don't know
all-
how to. I don't know what happened.
He's in Willy
Amazing.
Wonka's office, so he's the guy who always takes cask strength whiskey and waters it down to 30%. He hates
This
cask
guy's
strength.
tripping on acid right now.
I thought I was, Kate.
There's my Kano bottle, which you can only see the bottom, so it looks like it's full, but it's not full.
For Balblair's next trick, he's going to turn into a cat.
Okay, so I feel like I'm gonna say something and I'm probably gonna upset some people, so I'm warning you, okay? This is the least favorite of all the ones we've tasted.
Interesting.
Now here's the thing. I feel like you've lost, it's not balanced at all, right? It's just basically a sherry bomb. And so you lose that amazing Balblair goodness. Now, if I hadn't tasted all these other expressions first, and I just tasted this one, I'd love it. But, this is the context, and I'm not loving it. I think it's way out of balance.
So, Kate, it's funny you say that because conversely for me, that was the first Balblair. This is the first Balblair I ever had. And until tonight, I've never had any other Balblair. So I had the rest and I'm like, where's the sherry? So I actually really liked this and I was expecting sherry. So it's kind of funny. We went in reverse order.
Yeah. I bet you I'm going to hold on to this and then I'm going to taste it again in a few days without anything else around it and see how much I like it. But right now it's my least favorite.
See, this always reminds me of that. This always reminds me, and I always go back to that Mark Twain quote. One of my favorite whiskey quotes is there's no such thing as a bad whiskey. Some are just better than others. And the one thing to kind of compound that is, for me, it is purely individual. So it's, that is him saying it. And just as much as, you, Kate, and you, Pat, saying it is, there's no such thing as a bad whiskey. Some are just better than others for me as an individual, right? It is all about that. And as you're saying, Kate, yeah, it will be polarizing. It definitely will be imbalanced in the sense that it will be polarizing and very much Balblair, delicate, unique spirit, and sherry. But it's one man's junk is another man's gold. It's like that is exactly what someone's looking for. Whereas you might prefer that more balanced aspect of Balblair, right? So it really is. And the one thing is, what I loved is no one said it. Well, no point there. No one said it's a bad whiskey, because it's not a bad whiskey. So many people have come up to me with whiskeys I've worked with in the past and whiskeys I work with now, and they say, oh, this is rubbish. And I'm like, it's not rubbish. You just don't happen to enjoy it. And, people have come up to me in the past and say, when I worked with Glenlivet before, and they would be like, I don't like Glenlivet. I'm like, right, which one? What do you mean? You can't just not like all of them. You've got, rum casks, you've got sherry casks, you've got bourbon casks, and there's so many out there. You can't just say you don't like something when it comes to whiskey. So it was lovely to hear both of you just kind of have that balance of, no, I prefer this and I don't like this. And that's absolutely fine. You don't have to like everything. What I love is this kind of aspect when we taste whiskeys, picking out things you do like, whether it's the viscosity, the density, the very spicy note in it. I always force myself, if there's a whiskey that doesn't suit my palate, I'll always force myself to find something in it that I do enjoy. Because that's the beauty of it. Because then when you follow that trail of, I really like that spicy peppery note, when you start following that trail and asking people for whiskeys they've tried that are peppery, you start finding out a new group of whiskeys that you'd never even thought about, right? It's all about that adventure.
And I would have to say too, me being the barbecue guy here, with the food, depending on what you eat, that changes the flavor and profile. So like that sherry cask, if she had something maybe spice and like a barbecue like steak, it might actually make it even better versus worse. But yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like anything, it's context, right? So if I put this against a plate of food, that since this is the biggest in my mind of all the 6 we've tasted, it's going to stand up to food better than any other in general. And then the type of food and all that.
I think if you tasted it,
What was your favorite
first, then it might be. you might have a different reaction to it if you weren't.
What was your favorite, Kate?
It was really a toss-up. I really enjoyed all four of the primary expressions, but between the 15 and the 25, I really enjoyed both of them. And then from a practicality perspective, it's got to be the 15 because I can't afford the 25 as a daily drinker. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what you said, to be honest, I love sherry. I don't especially love high proof, but high proof is okay. But the K&L, I've had it open for a long time, and you would think normally it would have been finished by now. I brought it, like I said, to Tim's, to Tom's, for the first group tasting. So some people may have tasted it there, but I've always felt it tasted a little too sherry, a little bitter to me. And like Pat said, maybe sulfur even too. So, when I'm comparing it to like Aberlour and some of the other heavy sherry, but every time I try it, I enjoy it. But I didn't do the other tastings tonight, so that's why I'm interested to hear how people are comparing it to the others. So that's interesting. You say the 50. You said the 15 or the 25, Kate? Okay.
Yeah, Brian, I think everything is very well balanced, other than obviously these last two. And very well balanced, very, ex-bourbon, fruity, oak forward, slightly hints of that sherry influence in the 15 and the 25, but not too much. This is the only one I think that is like this tonight.
Heavy duty. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, it's kind of to touch on the balance aspect of it is that, a lot of people I've burst a few bubbles in the past when I've said single malt is blended. It is blended 100%. You've got your 5 categories of Scotch whiskey: single grain, single malt, blended grain, blended malt, and blended Scotch. Single malt is blended. It just so happens that all the casks that are being blended together, from a professional courtesy point of view, married together, we would probably start saying, is it just so happens they all come from one distillery, right? So all the casks from Balblair, Glenlivet, whoever it may be, you're marrying those casks together to create an expression. So the 12, the 15, 18, all those casks are the exact same family, the same DNA, the same Balblair family unique spirit, and married together. And then what we have in those last two are individual family members or individual casks that have been taken out and shown for what they are. And they're not designed to be balanced in the sense of what we know, right? They're designed to be very characteristic and very intense and very prominent. Because they're not being hidden amongst their family members, they're being shown for being loud and proud, and that's what they are, right? And that's why we purchase single casks. And the great thing about, the horrifying thing is that you'll never taste it ever again unless you buy 2 bottles. You will be able to taste the same profile. Specifically, you will never taste that again in your life. It is, wine, whiskey, and for me, it's a very cultural thing, but it's unique in the sense that you'll just never get it. You'll never be able to replicate it at all specifically. But for me, wine, whiskey, brandy, whatever it may be, it's a cultural thing. It's a very impassionate thing for me. And that's what makes it so wonderful, just following that, going down that rabbit hole of continuous exploration, in the sense that it is quite infinite in that sense.
That was very poetic. And that brings us to our next point. Before we go there, I want to answer Brian's question. I forced everyone to pick their one favorite expression of the night. So I think this is the first time where the cask strength expressions did not win. So you guys are clearly doing something right with your core expressions. 25 obviously took it at 36%, 8 votes, but then the 15 and the 18 took 5 votes each to be tied for second. So that says something. Usually this group will go gaga for the high proof. So
it's even lower, both lower than the core range. Wow.
Yeah, so that's a rarity. But when Derek and I were setting this up, we thought we'd have a little fun. So everyone has some buttery cookies in front of them, or they should. I hope you're enjoying them. Yes, Anna, yours was shipped. It didn't fit in the box. Sorry. Told you to make your own buttery cookies. And Everyone else got some buttery cookies.
Not the people from the outside, though.
That's right, not from the people from the outside.
Or the watchers.
I know some people wrote poems. So, Stuart, you want to tell us a little bit about Burns Night? We're doing this whole poetry thing in honor of Burns Night coming up in a couple of days.
Yeah.
So we wanted to have a little fun with this tasting, more than just drinking whiskey, but just to hang out and have some fun. So Burns Night is a big Scottish holiday that we should all know about.
Yeah, so Burns is, a lot of people don't know that Burns actually has a huge affinity in relation to Scotch whiskey, and was a massive advocate for legal distillation. He was actually an exciseman, who famously for years the Scottish hid and ran away from excisemen and ran away from the law because they felt that it was their God-given right to produce whiskey and not have to pay tax on it. But this was, of course, back when we were running around with tiny stills that we could hide in holes with, and of course we would not have the Scotch whiskey that we wouldn't have the whiskey that we have today if it wasn't for the legalization of it and also the production of it on a mass scale. So we have a lot to thank Burns and his people for. But so Burns was an exciseman and was responsible for promoting the legalization, the commercialization of Scotch whiskey. He was massive for it, and he wrote very readily about it. And I have the last three verses of one of his poems that was written about whiskey. And if you don't mind, in my sultry tones and as best as I can do, but I have it here if you'd like to, I can recite three verses of it before I disappear. So you can hear the replication that's called John Barleycorn, and of course Barleycorn being John Barleycorn being whiskey. John Barleycorn is representative of whiskey. John Barleycorn was a hero bold of noble enterprise, for if you do but taste his blood, 'twill make your courage rise. 'Twill make a man forget his woe, 'twill heighten all his joy, 'twill make the widow's heart to sing, though to tear were in her eye. Then let us toast John Barleycorn, each man a glass in hand, and may his great posterity ne'er fail in old Scotland. There we go.
All right, good.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers. That's good.
Famously eaten with haggis, neeps, and tatties every single year. My friend hosts a dinner every single year that I can attend whenever I can, and I bring the whiskey, he prepares the dinner, and it's usually about a 5 a.m, 6 a.m affair, which is a very, very good fun. But it is just us sharing stories, talking, laughing, and it's about togetherness. It's about collective ideas. It's about bringing people together and enjoying just company. It's not about focusing on anything else other than being with the people that you care about, that you want to talk to and enjoy their conversation. So I can safely say that I've very much enjoyed all of those aspects this evening. So thank you all for joining, and it's been an absolute pleasure talking you through Balblair.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.
It's been great.
I hope you're not planning on leaving yet. You have to choose the winner for the poetry.
No, that's why I'm waiting on this as well, right?
Awesome. Who brought a poem? Who wants to go first?
I'll go.
There we go.
All here's to other meetings and merry greetings then, and here's to those we've drunk with, but never can again. Salute.
All right.
Hey, like
Love
it.
that.
It's good.
Is that an original, Julius?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Love that, Julius.
Thank you. I think I put it on one of my reviews as a cheers.
Jane, I think you raised your hand.
Whiskey makes your heart grow light. Whiskey makes your eyes grow bright. Lift a glass to sit and ponder why the fellow over yonder sits and drinks a beer all night.
Brilliant.
I like it.
It's good. That's good.
Oh, fantastic.
Anyone else?
So I did
Sheed.
mine haiku style, okay? Because isn't that what Vadim suggested?
Yeah, just keep it simple. Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, haiku style. Here we go, okay? Highland or Isla, barley, water, yeast, and heat make a good whiskey.
Love it.
Nice.
Elegant.
Here we go. We got a lineup. Pat, you want to go first?
Sure. Whiskey with an E. From the ricks of Kentucky or Tennessee, you come to me. Whiskey with a Y. From where doth your barrels lie? Cometh from the mountains doth the lands of high? Or from the salt-laced air of the Isle of Skye? Cometh to me from the land where the moors of heather sweep across the emerald eye? I do not know, but I know your time is nigh. Whiskey for me, I do not know from where you cometh to me, but for I have enjoyed yet a dram or two or three.
Well done.
All right.
Harry?
Hi. Oh, I guess I put my hand down now. How do I do that? Lower hand. Okay. There once was a lass with a whiskey glass. She wore a monocle as she hosted Barrel Room Chronicles. Armed at the hilt, on the hunt for a man with a kilt, Sam Hewen was her target that she needed for her market. She longed to gander at the show Outlander. So do me a favor and get me Jamie Fraser.
Kerry, my friend works on the Outlander
Oh,
series.
love that show.
There you go. There's the introduction you needed.
We'll talk.
No problem. I can't promise anything.
Maurice, you had your hand up. You wanted to say something.
No, I apologize. I was trying to, I'm a little rusty after COVID. I was trying to do the clap and it raised my hand. So I was just applauding everyone. Sorry about
Okay.
that.
No worries. No worries. So I'm revisiting the 18 and it's so cookies and doughy. It's so amazing. This is the perfect thing while everybody's eating cookies and I can't.
Does anyone have a haggis for our pre-Burns night affair tonight?
So I had considered getting canned haggis for everyone, but I figured I don't know who's vegan.
No, please don't.
And haggis sounds scary.
Oh, David, are you not a fan of haggis?
No, it sounds disgusting.
Oh, haggis is one of the most delicious things.
Haggis
you'll
is
ever
amazing.
taste.
It's really good. It's really good.
So good.
But I don't know
I don't know
that I
if-
do the canned haggis. That's
Yeah,
the
I don't
problem.
think it should be
Canned
canned. It
haggis.
shouldn't
That's
be
the
canned.
can thing. That's a little dicey.
I want haggis made by Julius Vasquez.
Ooh, I'm in for that.
Oh,
Yeah, I would do a
accepted.
barbecue haggis.
challenge accepted.
100%.
There you go. Smoked haggis. Julius, you
Oh,
come to
man.
LA and smoke a haggis in my house. I'll host another get together.
We'll just do that anyways, either way.
All right,
Come
I'm
on.
down. There you go.
If anybody can do it, Julius can.
There you go.
I'll be in Vegas, you guys, the Valentine's weekend. So if anybody wants to go out, I'm competing on a competition. Sorry, but yeah, just a shout out.
How will your wife feel with us crashing your Valentine's weekend plans?
I'm crashing it already. I'm doing a competition.
Okay. That's romantic. All right, Stuart, you got to hear everyone's poems, and you have the job that I don't want. You get to pick a winner.
They were absolutely wonderful. They were really, really good. I was really impressed with every single one of them. Oh God, you really made me do this. I thought this was going to be like a panel thing.
You know,
this was going to be like a panel
Wait,
thing.
why isn't he allowed to choose all of the above like you had us choose? For
Well, I didn't do it on the second one.
Wait a second. You
Because-
can make a lazy poll, but he can't be a lazy judge. All right, sorry.
All right, Brian.
Back to my hole.
So, Vadim, I assume there's a bottle up for the winner, right?
There is Derek. What's the prize? There is a prize.
So we've got excuse me. We've got a branded polo. We've got one of those beautiful pins that Stuart is wearing, and then we do have a bottle of 15 as well.
Ooh.
Well, wait.
We love you, Stuart.
I
Do we have
say
more time to come up
consolation
with
prize.
that?
Everyone.
I got to go write a poem.
All
Right,
right, so
good night, everyone. Have a good night.
cheers.
I have a second poem if you didn't like my
Yeah,
first
once
one.
was a Scott.
I have a poem
Cut
too
from that
now.
topic.
No, I absolutely loved all of them. The one that resonated with me the most, they were all genuinely absolutely amazing, but I'm going to give it to Jane.
Nice.
Congratulations, Jane. But I loved every single one of them. Thank you so much for that. That was really, really beautiful. It was something really wonderful to hear as well in a tasting that I've never had before. So thank you all. Thank
Well
you all.
done.
Yeah.
Thank you for playing, Stuart. I really appreciate that. We all do.
That's awesome.
I ripped off Robbie
Those are
Burns.
the
There's nothing to thank
consolation
me
parts
for.
for all of us is a pen.
I ripped him off a dead poet. Like,
Out. Out.
Well, thank you, everyone. That was absolutely amazing. As always, we are not kicking anybody out. You're welcome to hang out, but we want to be respectful of Stuart, and it is godforsaken what time it is. Early in the morning.
it's
So-
5 in the morning.
5 in the morning. So cheers to you, Stuart. Thank you for
Oh,
spending the
I
night
get
with
up
us.
at that time all the time. Cheers.
Thank you for waking up,
Thank you
Stuart.
Whiskey in
so
the morning.
much.
Really
Cheers,
appreciate
everyone.
Cheers to
It's an
Robbie
absolute pleasure.
Burns.
To Robbie
you again,
Burns and
Stuart.
Stuart
I'll be
and
back.
Balblair. Cheers,
No,
everyone.
thank you so much. Always an absolute pleasure. And I'm going to disappear for a wee nap and then up for my weekend. So thank you all again. Absolute pleasure. Cheers.
All
Cheers,
right,
everyone.
cheers, Stuart. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.